Okay, this book, I'm obsessed. It is one of the single greatest practice tools for aphasia at any level. I've used it with people who are just starting to get their words out, and I've used it with people who are having full conversations. And it works for everybody. Hi, I'm Bree, a speech therapist with over 10 years of experience working with people with aphasia. And today I'm going to share one of my very favorite practice tools, this book. If you have aphasia or if you're a loved one of someone with aphasia, this book is for you. And today I'm going to show you all the different ways I use it to practice talking, understanding, reading, and writing from the comfort of your own home. Let's get started. Okay, so the one I'm going to be showing you today is all around Bustletown summer. But the really cool thing is that they make several of these books for each of the seasons. And I think there's even Bustletown at night. So the possibilities are truly endless. And if you find yourself wanting to buy this book or one of the others after today's video, which you will, I'm going to put the link in the description below so that you can add this to your own home library and keep practicing at home. All right, the first thing I want to talk about is why I love these books so much as a speech therapist. The first thing is that it's not a traditional story. They don't have words here. There's just these really detailed scenes to tell the story. Because there's no language, that means that you can make it as basic or as complicated as you want. That also means that you don't have to speak English for this to be a really great resource. Another thing I really like is that it's nice and big. And when you put it on the table in front of you, it just stays open, which can be really nice if you have weakness in a hand or an arm after a stroke. The real difference that I find in these books is that they're actually really interesting. I could look at these books for hours, and I have, but it's also really functional everyday things. This isn't, about an alien on another planet. So it's a lot of words and actions that tend to be important to people because they're things that people do every day. Using this book to practice translates really well to your own life. Okay, so let me give you an example of one of these mini stories just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. On page 1, we see that the boy is in the tree house and he has his stuffed penguin with him. When we turn the page, we see that the boy has put the stuffed penguin on the bike and he's walking with his dad and his sister. We turn the page again and we see, oh no, the stuffed animal has fallen on the ground. He's eating ice cream and got distracted because it fell on the street. But look who's walking behind, right? We see the nun coming up behind them, and in the next page, she is holding it. She picked it up. We flip one more page. We see that the nun is still holding the penguin stuffed animal, and the boy is saying, hey, that's mine. Where did you find that? Right? So we've got this little mini story from page to page, which is really cool and really good to work on your language skills. Okay, so if you've watched my videos, you've heard me say this before, but I really like working on all areas of language. A lot of people really focus on talking, and that is okay. But as a speech therapist, I like to build back pathways for talking, understanding, reading, and writing. Getting all of those different pieces together to really strengthen those pathways in your brain and make it easier for you to think of words and communicate. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is talking. How can you use this book to get out more words? Okay, here's what I might do for someone who is saying single words. For starters, I might cover portions of the book and of the scenes so that we're both looking at one small section together. These books have amazing detail, which is actually something I really love, but it can be a little visually overstimulating for someone who has really severe aphasia or who had a severe stroke, or somebody who has visual deficits as a result of their brain injury or stroke. And then you can keep it super simple. Point to an object and say, what is this? Dog, yeah. Kind of encourage them if they get those words out. What's this? Hopefully they'll be able to say car. Even pointing and saying single words is a great place to start. Start with those kind of common everyday objects. I use the examples of dog and car. Don't pick anything too weird at first. If you're working with someone who's a little bit higher level, they might want to practice some of those things. And the great thing about this book is that it's super detailed and it does have those trickier words, something like porcupine or snail. But really remember to kind of keep it at your loved one's level. Family and friends. If your loved one cannot get those words out by themselves, you can say the word and have them repeat. A tip for this: have them look up from the book to your mouth. They'll really want to look at the book and concentrate and try and find that word, but if they watch you say it, watching your mouth helps their brain kind of figure out what muscle movements they're supposed to make and how they can get that word out themselves. So if you're having your loved one repeat, say, watch my mouth, dog. Okay, so we started with single words. If that's too easy, start moving into phrases, right? So let's say you started with dog. Then if you have someone helping, they might say, what is the dog doing? Or if you're by yourself, you can think, what is the dog doing? Try to add an action to that, a verb, right? And you might just get one word at first, and that's okay. Running. Now we have dog running, which is awesome. I know that people with aphasia will hear that and be like, oh, it doesn't sound good. But no, we are celebrating. You just had a noun, an object, and now you've added an action, a verb. That is a big deal. Family and friends, if you're helping, you can make that into a short sentence. The dog is running. Have them try to repeat that. Again, repetition is a really great tool. The dog is running. If they say something like, dog is running, yes, that's awesome. Celebrate that. It's not perfect, right? But they were just saying dog or running, and now they've got a phrase, dog is running, and that is awesome. Again, it's all about those little half steps. You got to celebrate each and every one. Some people just want the celebration, which is totally fine. Other people want to be corrected, so talk with your loved one. Ask them if they want to be corrected and if they want help with those little grammar words. You might say something like, yes, that was awesome, dog is running. You missed a tiny word at the beginning. The dog is running. Let's try that again. The dog is running. You say that. Getting out full sentences is tricky. If you have a helper, they might start you off by saying, the man is... See if you can just fill in that blank. Getting the verbs, the actions is really hard. But sometimes somebody kind of getting you started with the sentence might just make it come out. The dog is... And then you would try to repeat that whole sentence. The dog is running. And it's super easy to keep scaling up to make longer and more difficult sentences. So of course you can make full sentences. It might still be something relatively simple, like the man is riding a scooter. Or for people who are really high level, find me a person on the page and tell me a little story about their life, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm looking at this guy right here, and my sentence might be, it's very hot today, so this man decides to ride up the escalator to the restaurant so he can sip a cold lemonade. Another quick word of warning, because I think people get really frustrated that they can't talk how they used to, which is very understandable. But try not to do too much too fast. Keep going up in these little half steps till you get where you want to be. If a person cannot say any words at all, have them repeat. If you're able to get out single words, that is so awesome. Try to add a verb and get a little phrase. If you can get phrases pretty easily, try to make a sentence. As you make sentences, have them get a tiny bit longer, a little bit more complex. In this way, you can keep it more frustration-free. You can also use these pages to practice understanding or comprehension. I'm talking about auditory comprehension, listening. And for this, it really is easier if you have a family member or a friend to help out. All right, family members and friends, for somebody who's having a lot of difficulty, use whatever they were just able to say to keep it at their level. I might have the person try to say, somewhere between 5 and 10 words. And then after they've gotten those words out, then you start to say those words and see if they can point. For example, if the person just said dog and car and tree, you would now turn those around and use those for listening, right? Don't go in the same order that they went in, kind of mix it up so that it's not obvious, but use those same words they just said and say, point to the tree. Where is the tree? If your loved one is doing that really easily, you might start to use sort of longer phrases or sentences. Point to a person who's riding a horse. Point to a person who's driving a car. Do you see how that's trickier? We were just saying car, point to the car, and now we're saying point to a person driving the car. They have to do a lot more auditory processing to figure that out. Again, kind of like make sure you're doing it at the level that's appropriate. You can watch the person to see kind of how frustrated they are, or if they're just having a lot of trouble and they need your help every single time. It might be a clue to back off a little bit, go down a little half step. Not all the way back down to the beginning, but just a little bit to kind of build up that success again. Okay, and let's talk about another thing. Do you see how so far with these tasks, all I've had the person do is point on the page? That is a comparatively easier task than having them verbally respond, right? If they can just listen and process and find it, that's already doing a lot of work. So keep that in mind. Pointing is an easier task. And then if they're a little bit higher level, if you want to make it a little bit trickier, you can start to have them verbally respond as well. So let's compare these two tasks. The first would be point to the donkey eating the strawberries. They've already had to process a lot in that. Point to the donkey eating the strawberries, right? And they point in the book and they find it. Here is an example of a harder question. Okay, the next question. This one's harder. We're looking at the same thing in the book, but listen, if I say, what is the donkey doing? Your loved one has to understand that question, has to do that processing to figure out, what are they asking me? What is the donkey doing? Right? They kind of have to process all of that. They see it on the page, so you can point it out in that instance, but now they have to both understand and formulate a response. That's harder for them to say, the donkey is eating strawberries, right? And if you don't have special training in this area, or if you haven't worked with people with aphasia before, you might not understand that subtle difference between just pointing, an easier task, and having them actually verbally respond. That's harder. Always be mindful of what you're asking your loved one to do, and notice if they're feeling fatigued or if they're getting frustrated. That might be a clue to back off or take a break for the day. Okay, but going off of that, to make understanding more complicated, more complex, you can ask more open-ended questions. For example, what is the man buying at the newsstand? And this can be really hard if you don't point at all, if you don't give them any context and you just ask them that and they're looking at the whole entire page. That is really hard. In this case, I might actually point and kind of show on the page where we're talking about. What is the man buying at the newsstand? Right? So they have some amount of context because you're asking them to do something really hard. Here's another example. What does the dog want? Right? They're having to understand what you're asking. They might respond running, right? Because they didn't quite get that. What does the dog want? He wants the ice cream. But they might not kind of have that processing, that auditory processing might be lacking. They might be missing some of those words or some of that meaning, and they might give you a different response. In that case, you can try to repeat yourself. You can also try to write the question down. Sometimes people's reading is a strength, and that can be kind of a little way to help them. Or you can just move on. You can tell them the answer. You can say the dog wants ice cream, or yes, he's running because he wants ice cream. Some other examples of comprehension questions. What instrument is the man playing? Okay, that is really hard because thinking of the word accordion Even if they understood exactly what you said and their auditory processing was fine, they might have a lot of trouble thinking of that word. It's kind of a weird word. That's not an instrument we see all the time. That's not a word we use that often. What is the nun holding? Why is that person in a hurry? These are examples of comprehension questions. Again, asking the person to respond verbally is really hard. If that is too hard, go back to pointing questions. Point to the nun. Point to the person buying a newspaper. Those are just some examples. All right, we're halfway through. If you're finding this video helpful, please click like, leave me a comment below, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to my channel, Aphasia with Bree. Those things all help more people find these videos. Next, let's talk about writing. One trick I really like to use is practicing spelling with bananagram tiles. And if you've seen my other videos, you might have seen me talking about this. I made a whole video on how to make your own letter tile spelling kit. That would be this thing. Essentially, if you're a family member or a friend who's helping someone with aphasia practice their spelling, you can find a word on the page. So for example, I'm going to use the word clock, and you would tell them, it's not a secret. You would say, this is a clock. Let's spell the word clock. And you get out letter tiles for each letter in the word. You scramble them up in your hands, and then you put them down on the table. And then you say, all right, use these letters to spell the word clock. I then always have them write down that word on a piece of paper or a dry erase board. Even if the person has weakness in the hand they usually use to write, I have them switch over to their non-dominant hand and give it a try. Believe me, the more you practice, the better you get, and we want to use all of those pathways to help get your words back. That includes writing. Of course, if you can write single words without letter tiles, go for it. That's awesome. You can open the book, look at the pictures, and choose the words you know how to write and put them on your paper. Now, I will say a lot of people will get discouraged because they can't write every single thing in the picture. Okay, that is not the right way to look at this. We are celebrating the wins, people. So if you can think of 3 or 5 or 10 words and get them on your paper, that is worth celebrating. Don't be down on yourself because you're like, oh, but I didn't know how to spell this word. That's okay, we're practicing. Don't be so hard on yourself. This isn't going to come easy, but the more you do it, the better you get. Practice makes progress. Of course, you can move up from single words to phrases and sentences. You can always make it a little bit harder. If something's getting too easy, push yourself to the next little half step. All right, if you're going from single words to sentences and that feels intimidating, you can use like a sentence formula. Start with, the man is fill in the blank. The woman is fill in the blank. The dog is fill in the blank. This puts less pressure on you to create a brand new sentence every time. And it's a really good starting point when you're going from just these single words to putting it together in a grammatical sentence. And of course, you can always keep getting more and more advanced. Pick one little tiny part of the book and write a mini story. Make stuff up. For example, this is Mary. She is waving to her friend, Lucy. They haven't seen each other in several months because Mary has been busy with work. They can't wait to catch up over coffee. Or you can find one character and flip across the pages to tell a sequence of events. First, this happened. Then this happened. Now this is happening. That can also get you some past tense and some future tense and some more complicated grammatical forms. Here's an example. First, the boy was in the tree. Then he was walking with his dad and sister. Now he's eating some ice cream, but it spilled. Another fun way you can practice writing is by putting little speech bubbles or little thought bubbles over people's heads. What are they saying or what are they thinking about? Here's an example. Okay, I'm just being goofy here, but I'm looking at this cat who's watching the mouse, and I said that he's thinking, you can run, but you can't hide. Or maybe this lady is saying, come on, keep up, run faster. Last but not least, let's talk about reading. And this is an area that I will say it's easier if you have a family member or a friend to help you out. That way, when you're reading, they can kind of correct you if you're making some mistakes. But I'm going to show you some activities that you could do. Family members and friends, there are two types of reading. There is reading in your head, where you're just looking but not saying anything. And then there is reading aloud. These are two different skills. I cannot say that enough. So it's important to keep that in mind. There are different tasks for reading in your head, which tends to be easier, and there are different tasks for reading out loud, which tends to be harder. Keep that in mind as we go forward. To help a person with reading without making them say anything out loud, what you're going to do is write words or sentences on index cards and have them match the words to the picture. Again, I like to use the words that your loved one can write themselves to make sure that you're keeping it on the same level. If they're writing words like ball and tree and car, do not give them words that are like porcupine and escalator. Okay, those are harder, obviously. Keep it at their level. Don't try to, all of a sudden they're talking at one level and you're making them read at a wildly different level. Usually, not always, but usually it's roughly the same throughout the language domains. Another half step up, you can choose a person in the picture, show them, it's not a secret, and have the start of a sentence like the man is, and then give them 3 different choices. If your loved one is at the point where they can read sentences aloud, which is harder, I'm being a broken record here, you can have them read sentences out loud if that is their level and if nobody is being frustrated by that. If they're doing simple sentences, try things like, the man is playing the guitar. You can always make these sentences harder, but again, I encourage you to keep them at the level that the person with aphasia is at. Don't try to make this way trickier. You are not a speech therapist. I know I'm giving you lots of hints here and tips for what to do at home, but save the truly, really hard things for their therapy sessions where the speech therapist will know how to help and will know how to cue and can keep it frustration-free. Okay, if you do want to level up, you can make the sentences a little bit harder or a little bit longer. You could also write a short paragraph or a short story and have them read it aloud. Again, that's really hard, but I'm trying to give ideas for everybody because truly anyone can use these books no matter what their level is. This book does not have sentences on every page like most books do, but if you turn it to the very back cover, there's like a little paragraph of text here, and then by the characters in the book, there's like a little snippet about what's going on with them. For example, if you look at this group up here, it says, Sylvia takes the kids to the flea market. A quick note here is that saying the names of people tends to be really, really hard. You might have a hard time saying your own name or your loved one's names, so reading a name like Kara or Irma is going to be really, really tricky. If that is hard, no worries. You can always just say the person, right? The person invited all her friends to her birthday. The woman has her day off. You can kind of skip their name Irma and just say the person, or you can say the people, right? Because there's 3 names in a row. Head to the flea market after cleaning the house. Kind of skip those proper nouns, those names. That tends to be something that is really, really, really difficult with aphasia. If you can do it, awesome. But if you have trouble, just kind of put the person or the cat in place of that proper noun. So this is a little bit of actual text like on the book that you could practice reading. But there are other ways to practice reading too. Okay, I know so far I've talked about talking, understanding, and reading and writing as though they are very separate things and you have to do them separately. That is not true at all. This is how I might do this in therapy. I would start with talking, I would point to something and say, what is that? Hopefully the person can say the word dog. If they can't, you might say it and have them repeat. You can also give small clues, like it's not a cat, it's a... Sometimes kind of starting them off like that will get the word to come out. Dog. Great. Write the word dog on the paper. Okay, what is this thing? Choo-choo, it's a train. Nice, write that down. If all of a sudden they're having trouble, they can't get the word train, I would get letter tiles. Scramble them up. Train. I probably wouldn't actually put it on the book because that might be a little visually overwhelming. I'd stick them on the table. I'd have them try to unscramble. Switch these two. There you go, nice job. Write it down on your paper. We would keep going like this for a while. I would have them say a word and then I would have them write it on their paper. Okay, after they have some on their paper written down, and we've done that for a little bit, I might then work on that auditory processing, that listening task. And I would say, not going in order, but kind of using those same words. I might say, where is the balloon? Point to the balloon. Right, and whether they point here or here, I would say, yep, that's right. Even if you were totally looking at this one the first time, as long as they are pointing to a balloon, we are happy. Go to the next one. Where is the train? Point to the train. Great. So you see how we've done talking, we've done some writing, now we're doing listening. After I go through all of the words that way, I might go back to talking and writing, or I might switch over to reading. Then I might have them read that out loud. Can you say this word? What is that? Clock. If it's right next to the object, they might not actually be reading. They might just be looking at that object and saying it. So you can always kind of make a big stack of these for later. And you could even do multiple pages like that and kind of have this stack of words and mix them all up. And then have them just read like this. Bird. Dog. Train. But again, you don't have to just do talking tasks, then understanding, then writing, then reading in that order, keeping them very distinct. You can and should mix it up. This keeps it more interesting. It can also keep people from getting so fatigued because everybody has strengths and weaknesses in here. And if you just have them doing the task that's really, really hard for them, they'll get tired more easily. So just remember to mix it up, use all of these different areas, and keep it fun and as frustration-free as possible at home. All right, y'all, that's it for today. Please click like, leave me a comment below, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to my channel, Aphasia with Bree. Those things all help more people find these videos. If you want a printable practice page for this book, check the link below. I've put a description of the activities that I talked about in this video so that you can keep practicing at home. You can print that sheet out and kind of have it to reference as you're working on this. If you have aphasia, or if you are a family member or a friend of someone with aphasia, this book will be your new best friend. Again, we were looking at Bustletown Summer today, but there are several of these books and I love them all. Check the link below and get yours today. I hope this helps. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys soon.